Today, it is my pleasure to present to you Take Me Out to the Ballgame, professional baseball in Milwaukee. Over the next 45 minutes or so, I will provide an overview of the history of professional baseball in the city, starting with its origins before discussing Milwaukee's professional baseball teams, both minor and major league, its three most important ballparks, and four people who are crucial to the history of baseball in this city. But first, a few acknowledgments. This presentation is primarily based on a variety of articles in the Encyclopedia of Milwaukee, which is produced and made available by the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I'm very appreciative of the research done by Diana Bell-Scamper, Bob Bugie, and Dennis Pajot on their articles for the encyclopedia. The section on origins and the early portion of the team section are also largely based on Al Berg's 1992 book, History of Milwaukee Baseball since 1859. Finally, I'm also in debt to former MCHS archivist Kevin Abing for his past presentations. While all the research and image selections for this presentation today are my own, Kevin's presentation served as an inspiration for me. This presentation has been principally illustrated by photographs and other images from the collections of the Milwaukee County Historical Society Research Library. MCHS is located in the former Second Ward Savings Bank at the corner of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and Kilbourne Avenue in downtown Milwaukee. Also included are several clippings from the comprehensive database of the Milwaukee Journal and Sentinel newspapers, digitized and made available thanks to the Milwaukee Public Library. A selection of public domain and freely licensed images from other sources appear as well, especially for more recent subjects, and each of them will be credited as it is shown. This section on origins provides an overview of the history of baseball in Milwaukee, dating back before the arrival of the professional game in the city. The first organized baseball game in Milwaukee was played on November 30th, 1859. This game, and two more played the following month, December, were contested on the former Wisconsin State Fairgrounds along Spring Street, now Wisconsin Avenue, a plot of land that is today part of the Marquette University campus. The following spring, Rufus King established the Milwaukee Baseball Club, the first organized team in the city. Pictured is an April 1860 Milwaukee Sentinel article announcing the organization of the club. The rules of baseball at the time were quite different from today. Pitchers had to throw the ball underhand, bat length was not regulated, and fielders did not use gloves. The Milwaukee Baseball Club played only one season in 1860, as the Civil War had already begun before opening day could occur in 1861. In October 1865, the Cream City Baseball Club was established in Milwaukee and began play in regional competitions. It soon asserted itself as one of the strongest amateur teams in the Midwest. Led by H. West, the team included millionaire and politician Daniel Wells in its lineup. The Cream City Club played its games at Camp Scott, the new name for the former state fairgrounds where baseball had first been played in the city. It had been renamed while serving as a training ground for soldiers during the Civil War. In 1867, the team moved to Camp Reno, also called Camp Siegel, another Civil War-era camp located on Prospect Avenue near Lake Michigan. Thanks to the financial support of wealthy local meatpacker John Plankinton, the team built a ballpark there that was well served by a streetcar line that stopped nearby. By 1868, their gate receipts were enough to pay back Plankinton's initial investment in the team. Pictured is the 1869 team photo of the Cream City Baseball Club. Professional baseball arrived in Milwaukee in 1867, when the Brooklyn Athletics beat the amateur Cream City Club 67-13. For the next few years, professional teams from other cities were only playing exhibition games in Milwaukee or stopping in the city as part of barnstorming tours. There were still no pro teams calling the city home at the time. The highlight of the barnstorming era in Milwaukee occurred in 1869, when the Major League Cincinnati Red Stockings played in the city during their cross-country year-long tour. They beat the Cream City Club 85-7 in front of more than 2,000 spectators. Pictured is an excerpt from the Milwaukee Sentinel's original coverage of the game, republished in its Sentinel Files feature on the 100th anniversary of the event in 1969. The Cream City Club played its most competitive baseball in the late 1860s and early 1870s, defeating both in-state rivals as well as competing in tournaments in Chicago and Rockford, Illinois. Pictured is a November 1865 Milwaukee Sentinel newspaper clipping listing the team's lineup for an upcoming game. Note that baseball was still being played in November in Milwaukee in this era. Despite playing strong opponents, the Cream City Club lost only one game to another Wisconsin baseball team during this period. By the mid-1870s, the Cream City Club began paying its players, marking an important early milestone for professional baseball in Milwaukee. Milwaukee has been an important city for professional baseball since the 1870s. From that decade until the 1950s, the city occasionally played host to major league games, but the most prominent fixture of professional baseball in Milwaukee prior to the mid-20th century was high-level minor league play, equivalent to today's AAA. The reason for this was largely due to proximity to Chicago and its relative size compared to Milwaukee, along with the fact that the Windy City had two major league clubs for most of this period. Given these circumstances, Milwaukee found a niche as a minor league town until 1953. Pictured are baseball scores and standings in a 1914 Milwaukee Sentinel article showing four different leagues, demonstrating the baseball landscape at the time. The leagues are the Minor League American Association, which included the Milwaukee Brewers, the American League, the National League, and the Federal League. This section focuses on the story of baseball in Milwaukee, told through the numerous professional teams, both major and minor league, that have played in the city. By 1876, the Cream City Club was defunct. The next year, 1877, the first completely professional baseball team in Milwaukee was formed. Known as the West End Club and eventually nicknamed the Grays, pictured here is their 1877 team portrait. They played against a loose grouping of opponents in 1877 before joining the National League, or NL, the following year, 1878. At the time, there were only 5 other clubs in the NL: Boston, Chicago, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Providence. The West End Club originally played their games on Wells Street, west of 35th Street, at what was at the time the outskirts of Milwaukee. In time for their first season in the NL in 1878, they moved to a new stadium on the block bound by Clybourne, Michigan, 10th and 11th Streets, now on the site of the Marquette Interchange. In their lone season in the league, the West End Club finished in last place in the standings with a losing 15-45 record, 15 wins, 45 losses. The team was hampered by numerous injuries and led the league in errors. However, West End outfielder Abner Del Rimple won the NL batting title with a batting average of .354, leading the league. Charles Bennett also played for the Grays that season, ultimately going on to a 15-year major league career. Regardless of these bright spots, the NL expelled the West End Club from the league after the end of the season. After several years without professional baseball in the city, in 1884, a new baseball team called simply the Milwaukee Club began playing in the Northwestern League. Pictured is a January 1884 Milwaukee Journal article announcing the team's admission into said league. They played at a new ballpark called the Wright Street Grounds, located on Wright Street between 11th and 12th Streets. The team played in both the Northwestern League and the Union Association in the same season, finishing with an overall 8-4 record. Both leagues folded that year, though. Between 1885 and 1890, multiple Milwaukee teams competed in various minor leagues. One of the players who played for a team in this city in this era was pitcher Clark Griffith, who went on to win 237 Major League games before becoming the first manager of the New York Yankees and then, ultimately, the owner of the Washington Senators. In 1891, Milwaukee briefly became a major league city again when Cincinnati's American Association franchise became defunct. This allowed the previously minor league Milwaukee Brewers, a nickname originally coined by the Milwaukee Sentinel in 1888, to finish the season in place of the former Cincinnati team. Despite ending the year with a winning record of 21-15, the American Association dropped the Brewers franchise at the conclusion of the season. Undeterred, in 1894, Milwaukee entered a team in the new Western League. This team was managed by Connie Mack, pictured, from 1897 to 1900. Mack went on to become one of the greatest managers in Major League history, and also the longest tenured. He still holds the records for games managed, 7,755, wins, 3,731, and losses, 3,948. He was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1937, being part of just its second class of inductees. Starting in 1895, Milwaukee's Western League team began playing games at a new ballpark on Lloyd Street, pictured here circa late 1890s, which was located between 16th and 17th Streets. In 1900, the Western League renamed itself the American League, or AL, and claimed Major League status. The team played just one season at the Major League level in the AL, but it was a failure both on the field, finishing with a losing record of 48-89, and financially, drawing less than 140,000 spectators for the entire season. The franchise moved to St. Louis to become the Browns, ultimately moving east to become the present-day Baltimore Orioles. In 1902 and again in 1903, Milwaukee fielded two separate minor league teams, the Brewers in the American Association, or AA, and the Creams in the Western League. Part of a rich tradition of Milwaukee baseball clubs to use the nickname Brewers, the AA team was owned by George Brumner, the noted publisher of the German-language newspaper Germania, who had also built the Germania building. Despite winning the Western League pennant under manager Hugh Duffy in 1903, the Creams folded after this season. In 1904, the Brewers moved into a new ballpark, Athletic Park, better known by its later name, Borchert Field. Pictured is the 1905 Milwaukee Brewers team photograph. The Brewers proved to be more long-lasting than the Creams, ultimately playing in Milwaukee into the 1950s. In April 1912, Brewers owner Charles Havenor died. His widow, Agnes Havenor, pictured in this 1913 portrait, then took control of the team. Under her leadership and with talented player-manager Harry Clark, the Brewers won back-to-back AA pennants in 1913 and 14. Pictured is the 1913 team wearing suits. Milwaukee native Oscar Happy Felsch played on these teams before his involvement in the infamous Black Sox scandal with the Chicago White Sox during the 1919 World Series, becoming one of the 8 players banned for life by Commissioner of Baseball Kennesaw Mountain Landis. The late 19-teens were lean years for the Brewers. One of the few bright spots of the period was Jim Thorpe, who is often regarded as the greatest athlete of his generation, playing outfield for the team in 1916. In 1920, a group led by local millionaire businessman Otto Borchert purchased the Brewers, but Borchert then bought out his fellow co-owners. Under his leadership, the Brewers were relatively weak, but Borchert made substantial profits by developing talented young players he could sell to major league clubs. He sold Joe Hauser to the Philadelphia Athletics prior to the 1922 season, and Milwaukee native Al Simmons, a future Hall of Famer, to the Athletics as well, for $40,000 before the 1924 season. In 1926, the Milwaukee Journal sports journalist Sam Levi called play-by-play for the first Brewers game to be broadcast live on radio. Pictured is the 1926 Brewers team photo. Note owner Otto Borchert in the center of the second row, wearing a suit. The night before opening day in 1927, Borchert died of a heart attack while speaking to the Elks Club. After Borchert's death, the Brewers went through a series of short-term owners, including 2 women, which was quite unusual at the time. In 1936, the Brewers won the pennant in the American Association. They then won the Little World Series, the name for the minor league championship in that era, by defeating the Buffalo Bisons of the International League. Pictured is that champion 1936 Brewers team. Led by the hitting of Chet Labs and Rudy York, some baseball historians consider the 1936 Brewers to be one of the greatest teams in minor league baseball history. In 1941, famed baseball owner and promoter Bill Veeck led a group of investors who purchased the Brewers. He hired Charlie Grimm as manager, who promptly led the Brewers to the first 2 of 3 straight pennants in 1942 and 43. Pictured is the 1943 team photograph, with Grimm 4th from the right in the first row. In addition to making improvements to Borchert Field and spending more money on player salaries, Veeck also brought his brand of showmanship and innovative marketing to the team. Some of his more notable outside-the-box ideas in Milwaukee included playing morning games with free breakfast for workers who were finishing night shifts, having a vaudeville night with the players providing the entertainment themselves, and even presenting a newly acquired pitcher through a giant cardboard cake on manager Grimm's birthday in 1943. After Grimm left the Brewers to manage the Major League Chicago Cubs in 1944, he was succeeded by Casey Stengel. While he managed only that season, he won 102 games and the last of the team's 3 consecutive championships. Pictured is the 1944 team portrait with Stengel 3rd from the left in the 2nd row. Stengel went on to win 7 World Series championships with the New York Yankees and was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1966. At the end of the 1945 season, Veeck sold the Brewers, and the following year, Boston Braves owner Lou Perini purchased the team. Becoming a Braves farm club, the Brewers' success continued, winning 2 more Little World Series titles in 1946 and 51. When the Braves moved from Boston to Milwaukee for the 1953 Major League season, the AA Brewers relocated to Toledo to become the Sox, remaining the Braves farm club. While the AA Brewers were the most prominent baseball team in Milwaukee during the first half of the 20th century, there were also a handful of other teams that briefly shared the spotlight with them during this period. Competing in just one season, 1913, were the Milwaukee Mollys, pictured as a June 1913 Milwaukee Journal article documenting a Mollys win over a team from Oshkosh. Named after their owner, Charles Moll, they played in the Wisconsin-Illinois League, a Class D league that was part of the 4th tier of the minor league system at the time. Note that the Mollys are sometimes considered a revival of the earlier Creams franchise. They did not draw well, and despite their winning 29-20 record in June, the franchise moved to Fond du Lac in the middle of the season. In 1923, the Milwaukee Bears of the Negro National League played in the city for their one and only season. Pictured is a photograph of 4 Bears players, courtesy of On Milwaukee. The team compiled an uncompetitive 15-51-1 record, although their manager, Pete Hill, would ultimately go on to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2006. In 1944, the Milwaukee Chicks, pictured in this team portrait, were granted a franchise in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, joining already existing teams in both Kenosha and Racine. The Chicks finished with the best record in the league, 70-45. The league used an unusual split-season format, with the championship series being contested by the first half winners, the Kenosha Comets, and the second half winners, the Chicks. Milwaukee won the series 4-3, although 1944 would be their only year in the league. In March 1953, Boston Braves owner Lou Perini moved his team to Milwaukee, becoming the first Major League franchise to move between cities in exactly 50 years. The last time a major league team moved cities was in 1903, when the Baltimore Orioles moved to New York City to become the New York Highlanders, later renamed the Yankees. Perini's three major reasons for moving the Braves were low attendance in Boston, due largely to competition with the Red Sox, the newly built Milwaukee County Stadium, and moral support and advertising revenue from Fred Miller of the Miller Brewing Company. Pictured is a scene from the Braves' opening day game in Milwaukee on April 14, 1953, photographed by George Kashalik. Among the top players on the Braves during their first year in Milwaukee were Joe Adcock, Eddie Matthews, and Warren Spahn. Pictured here is the 1957 team during spring training. Left to right, Adcock, Matthews, Bobby Thompson, and Hank Aaron. The Braves led the National League until late June and finished second in the final standings behind the Brooklyn Dodgers. Matthews led the NL with 47 home runs, and Spahn led all pitchers in the league with 23 wins. En route, they set an all-time National League attendance record of over 1.8 million people, despite County Stadium not having bleachers in either center field or right field at the time. In 1954, the Braves broke this record by over 300,000, finishing the season with an annual attendance of over 2.1 million people. Also in 1954, left fielder Bobby Thompson broke his ankle and was replaced in the lineup by Hank Aaron. From 1953 to 1958, the Braves led the NL in attendance every year. After second place finishes in the NL in 1955 and 56, in 1957, the Braves won the National League pennant. They proceeded to beat the New York Yankees in the World Series, 4-3, winning Milwaukee its first championship in a major professional sport. Lou Burdett pitched 3 complete game wins in the series, including 2 shutouts. Pictured are Braves fans celebrating the championship with the famous Bushville wins sign, a reference to New Yorkers derisively calling Milwaukee Bushville during the series. The following year, 1958, the Braves repeated as National League champions. Pictured is the 1958 team photo. However, they lost a rematch with the Yankees in the World Series, 4-3. In 1959, the Braves finished the regular season tied for first place with the Los Angeles Dodgers, but lost in a playoff and did not make the World Series. Warren Spahn was instrumental to the Braves' success during this era, winning more than 20 games every year from 1957 to 1961, leading the NL in wins each season. He and the other 3 core players of the Braves of this era, Aaron, Matthews, and Red Schoendienst, were all ultimately elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. For the next 6 years, the Braves continued to finish seasons with winning records, but they did not capture another NL pennant. After respectable attendance numbers in 1960 and 61, in the 1962 season, this figure declined substantially, partially due to the Milwaukee County Board's new ban on outside alcohol being brought into the stadium. In November 1962, Lou Perini sold the franchise to a group of 6 businessmen from Chicago. They attempted to move the Braves to Atlanta after the 1964 season, but the team's stadium lease ran through 1965, and a suit brought by Wisconsin Attorney General Bronson LaFollette kept them in Milwaukee for 1 more season. With the writing on the wall, that season saw exceptionally low attendance, just over 500,000 people for the year. Ultimately, in 1966, the Braves did move to Atlanta. Pictured here are Eddie Matthews and Hank Aaron walking down the tunnel at County Stadium together after the last Milwaukee Braves home game in 1965. In their 13 years in Milwaukee, the team never had a season with a losing record. In 1968, the Chicago White Sox played 9 home games at Milwaukee County Stadium, drawing a total of over 260,000 spectators in 9 games. This was nearly 30,000 people per game in Milwaukee, considerably more than their attendance of just under 10,000 per game at Comiskey Park in Chicago. The following year, the White Sox played 11 more home games in Milwaukee, but the attendance was considerably lower. Pictured is White Sox pitcher Wilbur Woods greeting children at County Stadium before a game in May 1969. This photograph is from the Milwaukee Journal. In March 1970, the bankrupt Seattle Pilots relocated to Milwaukee after just one season in Seattle. A group of investors in Milwaukee, led by Bud Selig, paid $10 million to acquire the team. They became the Milwaukee Brewers, reviving the nickname used by many previous Milwaukee professional baseball clubs, most notably the American Association team that played in the city until the arrival of the Braves in 1953. On opening day, over 36,000 fans were in attendance to see the Brewers play their first game, a 12-0 loss to the California Angels. Pictured as rookie shortstop Robin Yount being upended by the Boston Red Sox Cecil Cooper in Yount's first game with the Brewers in April 1974. Second baseman Pedro Garcia is visible behind Yount. The Brewers posted losing seasons in each of their first 8 years in Milwaukee, finally breaking the streak with a 93-69 record and a third-place finish in their division, the AL East, in 1978. The teams of this era were nicknamed Bambi's Bombers, after manager George Bamberger. They finished the next 3 seasons in second, third, and finally first place in the division, respectively, although the 1981 season was shortened by a strike. Pictured is the 1979 Brewers team photo. In 1981, they qualified for the postseason for the first time in franchise history, losing to the New York Yankees in the American League Divisional Series. In 1982, the Brewers were nicknamed Harvey's Wallbangers. Button featuring the nickname and the 1982 team photo is pictured. They gained the nickname from new manager Harvey Keene, who assumed the helm on June 2nd. That season, the Brewers hit a record-setting 260 home runs, winning 95 games and the AL East Divisional Championship. After defeating the California Angels for the American League pennant in the American League Championship Series, they ultimately lost the World Series to the St. Louis Cardinals, 4-3. However, 3 members of this team were ultimately elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame: Rollie Fingers, Paul Molitor, and Robin Yount. For the next 15 seasons, the Brewers were relatively weak, finishing as high as second place in their division only once in that span. This 1986 photo shows a Brewer Rob Deere after being tagged out by Cleveland's Dan Roan. One highlight came in 1987, when Paul Molitor achieved a 39-game hitting streak, still the 7th longest in Major League history. On September 9th, 1992, Bud Selig was named acting commissioner of baseball after Fay Vincent resigned, and that same night, Robin Yount joined the 3,000 hit club. When Selig was elected commissioner officially in 1998, he stepped down as president and CEO of the Brewers. His daughter, Wendy Selig-Priebe, took control of the team, marking the 4th time in the 20th century that a woman was the top official of the most prominent baseball club in Milwaukee. The Brewers played in the American League until 1998, when they changed leagues and were moved into the National League Central Division. The team continued to struggle, though, reaching a .500 winning percentage only once in the next 9 years. In 2001, the Brewers moved from County Stadium to newly completed Miller Park. In September 2002, Selig-Priebe resigned as team president, and Ulice Payne Jr. was named her replacement. He became the first African-American president of a major league team, although he only served for the 2003 season. In January 2005, Los Angeles investor Mark Attanasio led a group that purchased the Brewers from the Selig family for $223 million, and Attanasio became president of the team. Pictured is Attanasio attending a game at Miller Park in 2012, photographed by Wikimedia Commons user Royal Broil, released under the CC BY 3.0 license. Subsequent achievements by the Brewers have been more impressive. In 2007, the team was led by Prince Fielder and Ryan Braun to a second-place finish in the NL Central. The next year, they added pitcher CC Sabathia, whose strong second half of the season helped propel the team to a National League playoff berth as a wild card. The first Brewers team to qualify for the postseason since 1982, the 2008 Brewers lost the National League Divisional Series to the Philadelphia Phillies, 3-1. In 2011, the Brewers won the NL Central Divisional Championship and returned to the playoffs. Subsequently, they have also made baseball's postseason in 2018, 19, 2020, and 2021. 2018 was the last season they won a playoff series, sweeping the Colorado Rockies 3-0 in the National League Divisional Series. Pictured is Ryan Braun on the 2018 team, photographed by Ian DeAndrea, licensed under the CC by SA 2.0 license. To date, the Brewers have retired the numbers of players Hank Aaron, Raleigh Fingers, Paul Molitor, and Robin Yount, as well as honorary numbers for broadcaster Bob Uecker and owner and commissioner of baseball Bud Selig. This section focuses on the 3 most prominent baseball stadiums in which professional baseball has been played in Milwaukee since the turn of the 20th century. Borchert Field, originally known as Athletic Park, was built in 1888 on the block surrounded by 7th, 8th, Burleigh, and Chambers. The stadium was initially constructed by James A. Hart for the Western League Milwaukee Brewers, who would play there until 1894. In 1902, Athletic Park became home of the American Association Milwaukee Brewers, who would continue to play there until they moved to Toledo after the 1952 season. Pictured is a crowd outside Borchert Field in 1909. While the AA Brewers were Borchert Field's primary tenant, it also hosted the Milwaukee Bears of the Negro National League for their only season in 1923, and the Milwaukee Chicks of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League for their only season in 1944. The Milwaukee Badgers of the National Football Team of the National Football League played their home games at Athletic Park during their existence between 1922 and 1926, while the Green Bay Packers played 1 home game at the stadium in 1933. Pictured is Children's Free Day at Athletic Park in 1924. The caption notes over 5,000 children attended the game that day. In 1928, the stadium was renamed Borchert Field after Brewers owner Otto Borchert. Borchert Field was demolished in 1953 after it was supplanted by Milwaukee County Stadium. Its footprint served as a playground for a few years before it was cleared for the construction of Interstate 43. To this day, Borchert Field retains the distinction of being the longest-lived baseball park in Milwaukee. Pictured is a circa 1925 aerial photograph of the ballpark, showing the neighborhood around it, which is still sometimes referred to as the Borchert Field neighborhood. This photograph was likely taken by noted aerial photographer Albert F. Topfer. Milwaukee County Stadium's construction began in 1950. Without a major league tenant in Milwaukee at the time, it was built with the intention of luring a franchise to relocate to the city. Ultimately, this strategy paid off when the Boston Braves moved to Milwaukee before the start of the 1953 season. Pictured is the stadium during a Braves game in 1953. County Stadium is notable for being the first major league ballpark to be built with lights, clearly visible in this photo, as well as the first to be entirely publicly funded. After the Braves moved to Atlanta at the end of the 1965 season, the stadium hosted a handful of Chicago White Sox games in 1968 and 69. In 1970, it became the home of the Milwaukee Brewers after they moved from Seattle in time for the start of the season. The Brewers would ultimately play at County Stadium through 2000. County Stadium hosted 3 World Series in 1957, 58, and 1982. It was also notable as the site of Hank Aaron's final career home run in 1976. From 1953 to 1994, the stadium served as the alternate home of the Green Bay Packers, pictured here. Note the football field markings. It also hosted major rock concerts as well, by prominent bands such as Pink Floyd and the Rolling Stones. County Stadium was demolished during the winter of 2000-2001, when it was replaced by Miller Park, now American Family Field. Pictured here is the game at County Stadium during its final season in 2000, while construction on Miller Park proceeds in the background. American Family Field, originally known as Miller Park, pictured while under construction circa 2000, has been the home of the Brewers since 2001. It is located west of downtown Milwaukee, almost exactly on the same site as County Stadium. It has a retractable roof shaped like a fan and was designed in the retro style popular in the 1990s and early 2000s after the success of Baltimore's Camden Yards. On opening day in 2001, it hosted over 42,000 fans who watched the Brewers beat the Cincinnati Reds 5-4 after Bud Selig and President George W. Bush both threw out ceremonial first pitches. Soon after, the stadium gained notoriety as the site of the infamous tie at the 2002 MLB All-Star Game. Pictured here is an interior view of Miller Park, circa 2003, with my MCHS colleague, archivist Steve Schaffer, posing for a picture. This view gives a good sense of the height of the upper deck. The stadium features statues honoring Hank Aaron, Robin Yount, Bob Uecker, and Bud Selig, as well as the industrial workers killed in its construction. In January 2021, Miller Coors declined to renew their naming rights deal on the stadium, letting it expire after 2 decades of being called Miller Park. American Family Insurance of Madison subsequently bought the naming rights to officially rename the park American Family Field. This final section focuses on the 4 people who have statues at American Family Field and their unique importance to the story of baseball in Milwaukee. Comprising 2 players, a broadcaster, and an owner-commissioner, these 4 men can perhaps be thought of as the Mount Rushmore of Milwaukee baseball. Henry Louis Hank Aaron was born in Mobile, Alabama in 1934. He began playing semi-pro baseball with the Mobile Black Bears at age 17. After playing briefly with the Indianapolis Clowns of the Negro American League, he signed with the Boston Braves in 1952. During his minor league career in the Braves organization, he won Rookie of the Year in the Northern League and MVP in the South Atlantic League. Pictured is a December 1953 story on Aaron published in the Milwaukee Journal. He made the major league roster for the Braves in 1954, 1 year after they moved to Milwaukee. Aaron became one of the greatest hitters in baseball history while playing for the Milwaukee Braves and then the Atlanta Braves after the franchise moved to Georgia. In 23 seasons, he collected 3,771 hits, 2,174 runs scored, 2,297 runs batted in, RBIs, and 755 home runs. In MLB career rankings, he remains first in RBIs, second in home runs, and third in hits. He was also named to a record 15 All-Star teams during his career, spanning a remarkable 2 decades, the first in 1955 and the last in 1975. Among his other individual accolades include winning the National League Most Valuable Player MVP award in 1957, the year he led the Braves to their World Series title over the New York Yankees, the National Batting League title in both 1956 and 59, after achieving the highest batting average in the league, and 3 Golden Glove awards from 1958 through 60 for being the best defensive player at his position, right field. Aaron is pictured here during spring training with the Milwaukee Braves in 1957. In 1974, Aaron hit his 715th home run, surpassing Babe Ruth's career record that had stood for nearly 40 years. He ultimately hit 755 home runs, which stood as the all-time record for over 30 years, until it was surpassed by Barry Bonds in 2007. In 1975, the Braves traded Aaron to the Brewers, and he finished his career back in Milwaukee before retiring in 1976. He's pictured with the Brewers during spring training in 1975 in this public domain photo from the Desert Sun newspaper in Palm Springs, California. The Brewers retired his jersey number, 44, that year. The Braves retired it the next year, and Aaron was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1982. After his playing career, Aaron worked in the Braves front office and mentored players on the dominant Atlanta teams of the 1990s that won 5 NL pennants. In 1999, he was named to the MLB All-Century team, the same year that Commissioner Bud Selig created the Hank Aaron Award, which is awarded to the best hitter in the AL and NL, is voted upon by fans and members of the media. Beyond his statue at American Family Field, Aaron's legacy includes the Hank Aaron State Trail, a hiking and biking trail that crosses Milwaukee County from east to west, linking the ballpark to the zoo, downtown, and the lakefront. Pictured is the Hank Aaron State Trail in the Menominee Valley in 2006, photographed by Wikipedia user Sulfur, licensed under the CC by SA 3.0 license. Aaron is also honored by Henry Aaron Field, a baseball stadium in Glendale's Lincoln Park. He passed away in January 2021. Robin Yount was drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers at age 18, and in his first season in the major leagues, 1974, he broke into the starting lineup. He went on to play his entire major league career, which lasted until 1993, with the Brewers. Pictured is Yount posing for a picture with a member of the Robin Yount National Fan Club in 1976. He was a key player on the 1982 team that won the American League pennant and played in the World Series. He won the American League MVP twice at two different positions, shortstop in 1982 and center field in 1989. He became just the third player in AL history to win MVP at two different positions. Amassing more hits than any other player in Major League Baseball during the 1980s, Yount recorded 3,142 hits and 251 home runs by the end of his career. He also was selected as an All-Star 3 times. He holds the Brewers' all-time records for games played, runs scored, hits, doubles, triples, and RBIs. In 1999, he was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Pictured is baseball memorabilia dealer Gary Begal holding one of Yount's bats at his shop on National Avenue in 1983, with baseball memorabilia in the background. The photograph is by Ernest W. Anheuser for the Milwaukee Sentinel. Robert George Bob Uecker was born in Milwaukee in 1935 and attended American Association Milwaukee Brewers games at Borchert Field as a child. He played baseball as a catcher and was signed by the Braves in 1956, ultimately making his major league debut in 1962. While never an outstanding player at the game's highest level, he played with the St. Louis Cardinals, pictured here in this public domain photograph from 1965, the Philadelphia Phillies, with whom he won the 1964 World Series, and the Atlanta Braves before retiring in 1967. Uecker returned to Milwaukee after his playing career and began broadcasting the Brewers on radio in 1971. He demonstrated great ability as a play-by-play announcer, leading him to work nationally for ABC, as pictured here in this 1977 public domain photograph from the Desert Sun, and NBC broadcasts, as well as hosting syndicated sports programs. Outside baseball, he gained widespread recognition for his Miller Lite beer commercials with the famous "I must be in the front row" catchphrase, numerous appearances on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and an acting career. He played George Owens in the 1980s TV sitcom Mr. Belvedere and appropriately portrayed baseball announcer Harry Doyle in the film Major League and its sequels. Uecker was inducted into the National Radio Hall of Fame in 2001, received the Ford C. Frick Award for major contributions to baseball in 2003, and was inducted into the National Sportscasters and Sports Writers Association Hall of Fame in 2011 and the National Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame in 2012. In 2006, the Brewers retired number 50 in honor of his 50th year in Major League Baseball as either a player or a broadcaster. He is pictured here acknowledging the crowd before throwing out the ceremonial first pitch before Game 1 of the 2011 National League Divisional Series against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Photographed by Steve Pollock, licensed under the CC by SA 3.0 license. Alan Huber Bud Selig was born in Milwaukee in 1934 and grew up watching the AA Brewers play at Borchert Field, just as Uecker did. The president of a car leasing business, he became the largest stockholder of the Milwaukee Braves. After the Braves left for Atlanta, Selig sold his share of the team and established Milwaukee Brewers Baseball Club Incorporated. He hosted professional baseball games at Milwaukee County Stadium with the goal of attracting a full-time MLB tenant again. After failing to acquire the Chicago White Sox in 1969, he bought the cash-strapped Seattle Pilots and relocated them to Milwaukee, renaming them the Brewers. Selig is pictured on the left in this photo from 1970, in which he was inducted into the inaugural class of the Wisconsin State Chamber of Commerce Hall of Fame. He is standing alongside, from left to right, Kermit N. Caves, William R. Kellett, and John J. Lennon Jr. Selig served as president of the Brewers, helping lead them to the postseason in 1981 and the American League pennant and a World Series appearance in 1982. Pictured is an article on Selig in the Milwaukee Journal in April 1983. He became acting commissioner of baseball in 1992 and was officially named commissioner in 1998, at which point he gave up his ownership and CEO status with the Brewers. Among Selig's major achievements as commissioner, many of which were controversial, included adding wild card and divisional rounds to the playoffs in 1994, introducing interleague play in 1997, and consolidating the previously independent administrative offices of the American League and National League in 2000. Other major developments during Selig's tenure as commissioner were the implementation of a luxury tax with revenue sharing between teams, moving the Houston Astros from the NL to the AL, which balanced the number of teams in each league but has resulted in them both being odd numbers, and probably most significantly, the widespread steroid scandal in baseball. Pictured are Selig, left, and then President Barack Obama watching the 2009 MLB All-Star Game in St. Louis. Public domain photograph by official White House photographer Pete Souza. Note Hank Aaron and his wife Billy at the right. In January 2015, Selig retired as commissioner, and he was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2016. Thank you for attending my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, if there's no questions, I thank you, Michael, for your time today. What a fantastic and informative lecture. And thank you to the viewers who participated today. We will be recording this lecture and we'll make it available on YouTube next week. We will host another virtual lunch and learn on Friday, July 7th at 12 p.m. The topic for that lecture is the Wisconsin State Fair is a great state fair. Watch for the link in June on our social media channels and website. Thanks for coming today, and thanks, Michael, for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.